Um, I'm so excited about Ashley being here. I think, Ashley, you might have been one of first, the first people I pursued as part of our workshop initiative. And so we've been
Chase her
talking about
down.
this, yes, for
Hunt her
months. And it's
down.
oh my gosh, I have to get Ashley. And Ashley on Twitter is my all-time favorite. You might be the only reason I get on Twitter besides the occasionally Thursday freelance chat. So if you're on Twitter, for sure follow Ashley. Ashley is a writer. She's got a couple of side gigs. If you are not getting her newsletter, Content Connect, that is also a huge win. You will not regret receiving Content Connect in your email box. So Ashley creates incredible content and has also built these incredible brands, not just one, but I feel like you've created several personal brands. So I'm excited to learn from you on personal branding. If you have questions along the way, anytime, feel free to drop a note in Q&A and you will answer it at the end. Without further ado, here is my awkward handoff to Ashley. You're to this side of me on my screen. So,
okay, I'm going to try to, let's see, I'm screen sharing, and then we're going to go into presenter view. So while I'm doing this, I have to say, I actually just recently signed up for Moxie. I was getting ready for the presentation and doing my due diligence and stuff. And I was like, why am I not on this? And now I'm a customer. So take that for what you will. All right, so I'll just get started. I know that Michelle just introduced me, but I'll tell you a little bit more. I have been freelance writing for a little over 13 years now. And I primarily write in the e-commerce, marketing, and creator economy niches. So my clients include people like Uber, Shopify Plus, Business Insider, D2C Newsletter, who I actually write something different than, I write ads for them, which is very different from everything else I do, but it's fun. LinkedIn and hashtag paid. So that's kind of who I am as a freelancer. There we go. And then who I'm online, you can find me online at ashleyrcummings.com. My Twitter, Ashley R. Cummings, same thing. Michelle mentioned that that I have the newsletter Content Connect. And then I also have a YouTube channel that maybe you have seen. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's very fun. Michael Keenan and I, we just get together and we drink a lot of tequila and we talk about freelance writing. So it's kind of ridiculous, very fun. I invite you to join. Okay, so the first thing to get into it is just why should we even build a personal brand? But it's a lot of work. Why should we even bother? And there's one thing that I like to always keep in mind. I like to say, and I actually just mentioned this on Twitter in preparation, but essentially, if no one knows who you are, then they can't hire you. My absolutely number one reason for building a brand is client acquisition. My goals with my personal brand are to establish myself as an industry leader, and then also to be the first person to come to mind when you think of SaaS writer. So in an effort to do that, I basically all my messaging online, at least when I'm talking about freelance writing, is about freelance writing in the marketing and SaaS space. How to build a freelance writing business, and with the hope that people will recognize me as the person to hire. So I also like to point out that building a personal brand, it kind of does the exact same thing as a consumer product branding. So for example, if someone starts talking about athletic shoes, then the first thing that you're going to think of is probably not an actual athletic shoe. You're probably going to think of Nike or Adidas or one of these brands. And it's the same thing that you're trying to accomplish with your personal brand. You want someone to think of you when they start asking about writers in your niche. So just to give an example of this, I want to point out some of the great writers in a niche that have great personal brands. So if somebody says the word freelance writing coach, you're not thinking of the idea of freelance writing coach, you're thinking of a specific person probably. And one of these three people, I'm sure you'll recognize them immediately, but Kat Bogard, if somebody says, okay, I need to think of a killer B2B freelance writer, you're going to think of Kat Bogard. And the reason for that is because she builds such a good personal brand as a freelance writer. She's a community leader. She has a community on Facebook that's great. She has a newsletter that's awesome. And just everything she does is really building this message. Another person I like to point to is Brooklyn. And he, even though he has a completely separate identity as Kat, he's still one of those people that you think. He's built up his community with the Dear Freelancer, and then kind of as the freelancer turned agency guy. And then finally, you probably will think of Kaylee. And she's used her podcast, The Freelance Writing Coach, and then just a lot of what she does online positions her as the person you think of when you think of an e-commerce writer. So those are some examples of kind of the why and the who. So now let's get into a little bit more of the how. What are some of the things that you need to do in order to achieve this, in order to be the person who you think of when you're like, who do you need, who's the supply management freelance writer, or whatever it is. So we'll talk about just building an identity, a website, whether or not you need one, you do, your portfolio, your reputation, social media, having an own platform, and developing a voice. So let's dive in. So the first thing that I did when I started as a freelance writer all those years ago is I started with a logo. And my dad, he's a freelance graphic designer, actually. So maybe this is why I started there, but the importance of having a logo is probably not lost on me, just because I've had how many years of my dad being a freelance graphic designer. But essentially what a logo is it's a visual representation that links your personality and business to your industry and your niche. It just makes it a lot easier to remember you. So anytime that you have a visual linked with your name, it just, I don't know, there's probably some psychology behind it, but it just makes it easier to remember who you are. And it helps people to make those connections. So you see a piece of my writing, you see a piece of Kat's writing, and you can also kind of visualize the logo. And as part of that, I try to use my logo everywhere I exist online. It's part of my Facebook, it's part of my Twitter, it's part of my LinkedIn. I have that there just to kind of help out. And another example of this, I've already talked about Nike, but it's just so good. So Nike, there's a lot going on at Nike. It's very, very possible that if you were to go to a store and branding wasn't a thing, if you were to just go around and like look at clothing without knowing the brand, you're not going to know that you're not going to know who made it unless you're like a huge fashionista or something. But the second that you do see the logo, you're going to assign it to Nike. And the same thing, it's the same thing with your logo and your personal brand. You want that visual to really connect your story like cohesively together. The next thing that you want to do after you have your logo is to think about your profile picture. This is such a good opportunity for so many different reasons. I don't know why, but there's still like a lot of people who just like either don't have a profile picture or who have like an animation or an NFT or something like that. But it's important to have a profile picture, and it's actually, this is kind of a debate I've been having with myself. I've had the same profile picture for like 10 years. And as you notice, this is like 10 years younger me. When you see my face, you're probably like, what is it? Wait a second. But it's also like part of my personal brand. And so I'm trying to decide when I should update it, and I'll probably do something similar so that you can still recognize me. But yeah, so it's important to have a profile picture. Use a recent-ish headshot. Make sure that it's clear. Again, I think that NFTs are like as cool as the next person, but someone isn't going to recognize like your Bored Ape or whatever. They're gonna recognize your face. And then another thing to consider, and this is actually a tip I got from Caitlin. You'll probably recognize her immediately as well. But she gave a tip recently. I think it was in her Why We Buy newsletter, but she talked about the psychology of like a bright color that you can use. And I don't do this because I'd already been established or whatever with my profile picture. But she basically just said that people like remember bright colors really easily. And so sometimes if they're like, oh, I don't remember Caitlin's name or her last name or whatever, but I remember that she's like the bright yellow buyer psychology woman or something. And so I thought it was really interesting after Caitlin sent that newsletter, you saw a lot of bright colors popping up on profile pictures, but it's a fantastic idea, great way to brand yourself and a great way just to stand out and make help people make those connections. The next thing, and I don't necessarily do this, but it's such a good idea, but creating like a look is a really great way to establish your brand. And I think the best example of this is probably Christine Gritman. Everything she does is basically red. She's like the red lady. And I've engaged with her like quite a bit online, and but I wanted to meet her in person, and she was at the Creator Economy Expo, as was I. And so she was basically just like, hey, look for me, I'll be the one in red. And like, sure enough, looked through the crowd and I could identify her immediately because she had that look that's the same across social media as it is as was her personal look. So that's a really cool thing to do as well. Just make sure that your look is that you have some sort of look that people can identify. And then I'm going to go back to Caitlin for this, but excuse me, another thing in establishing your identity online is establishing a theme. And I love, Caitlin does this in like two words, like be unignorable. And basically all of her content is around that message. Like everything she does, her Why We Buy newsletter, everything that she does on social media is around that be unignorable message. And essentially, yeah, she teaches marketers how to leverage human psychology to stand out, to make more sales and build an audience. So it's cool that she just has a slogan there that really feeds everything she does, feeds into those two words, and it makes it really easy to understand who she is and what she does and the reasons why you would go for her for something. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of action items on here, a lot of homework. I have a background in teaching, so sorry guys, it's just how it's going to be. Okay, so action item one. So take some time and just to consider, like, who do you want to be online? Write it down, and then once you have that idea, create a consistent identity across all platforms around that idea. So you don't necessarily have to be on every platform if that can be like really overwhelming. I think that probably most people that are listening to this would mostly benefit from LinkedIn and Twitter, but just make sure that your identity is the same. And then I put, don't be cheap, hire a graphic designer. If you're gonna have a visual identity and you're gonna really lean into that, I think it's important to take the time to make it just like really nice. Okay, so the next thing is whether or not you should have a website. And there's actually a lot of debate in the community around this question. I'm getting like, sorry if you heard my phone ring, I'm getting a sales call. But yeah, there's a lot of debate in the community about whether or not freelance writers need a website. And honestly, I'm not even sure why this is a question. I'm definitely in the camp of having a website. So the reason for that, first of all, I mean, we live in a digital world. People online is how people find you. You have to have an SEO optimized website. And there's some people who do such a good job of this. Like if you Google like freelance writing, you're going to see Elle like everywhere. She just has done such a good job with her brand and with her website that like, I'm sure she gets absolutely tons of business from it. Another thing that it does is that it establishes credibility. If people like can't find you online, it seems like really sketchy. It also shows along the same lines as it shows professionalism. It shows that you've invested time into your website, that you've invested time into your brand, and that you care. And then it also gives you a place to host your portfolio, which we'll talk about in a minute. But a quick story, just to like add a little extra oomph about why you should have a website. So probably like 7 to 8 years into freelancing, I was like, I'm done with my brand. I'm done with my website. Like, so I like deleted my website. Instead of like transitioning, I just like deleted it and was like, I am done with this. I'm like gonna totally rebrand myself. And those few months when I didn't have a website, my clients went down. They couldn't find me. Like I wasn't getting like the action that I had been previously. And so I fixed that real fast. And I spent like, I don't know, like $3,000 on a website, just like got it up, like establish everything. And then sure enough, after that, I started getting clients again and, you know, started getting good clients. And anyway, so it put me firmly in the camp of absolutely have a website. Okay, so we'll run through this one kind of fast, but what to put on a website. I mean, we're writers. I think that it's awesome to have a headline. It's kind of a copywriting thing, but have a headline that tells readers exactly what you do. I have kind of a rolling one that's reasons to get in touch, and it just talks about like what they need to do in order to, or what basically what I do. Put your services on there. What do you offer? Your about page. This is, you know, you can get fun with it. It's a great way to like bolster up that SEO with some of the keywords and just telling people what you do. You want to put your samples on there. People actually hire me a lot by finding my samples. So pick your best ones, have them on there. I have a blog on there. I would say this is not necessary. It's not necessary for every freelance writer to also have a blog because it can get really overwhelming. But again, it is a great way to drive traffic to your site and to establish yourself as an industry leader, or to show off that theme that you're developing. And then your contact information. Okay, so just some website options. It can be overwhelming to build a website. I have a WordPress site. It's actually not my personal site, but WordPress is like fairly intuitive. So if you wanted to like build a website yourself, you can actually get a WordPress site up that will be decent as a starting point. Same thing with Squarespace. They have a really easy to understand and easy, intuitive to navigate system. So I would say those are like some really good places to start building your website. In the event that you're not quite ready to build a website, that's fine. But I definitely would say that you do need to have a portfolio at least. And if you're interested in that, then Authory, is that Authory or Authorly? I think it's Authory. And Contently are great places where you can at least host your portfolio. Okay, so the next action item is to pick a domain name. And then also to research the platforms, find out what's best for you. And then I would recommend hiring a designer. Again, if you don't have the budget for that quite yet or not ready, like, oh my gosh, WordPress and Squarespace have come such a long way in recent years that you can really like do a lot of it yourself. I have a professional designer for my website, but I have built out my blog, like my fun blog, by myself. So either works. All right, the next thing is your portfolio, and a huge part of building a brand is having your portfolio. It's gonna tell people exactly like what your skills are, what niche you work, what subject matter expertise you have, the content, the type of content that you write. This actually is more than branding. It's like a time saver for me. So like people can go to my website and be like, oh, this is what she writes. I'm not going to hire her because I need a technical copywriter or something. And then it's also like, if you have any like publications that you want to brag about, like this is a great place to do it. If people see a name, like, I don't know, like if they whatever, if they see that you write for Forbes or something, you might not be the best content you've ever written, but if you have the name Forbes attached to it, they're going to want to hire you. Something I actually probably a couple years ago, I don't know if this is this person's like idea still, but there's some names and people who've say like you don't necessarily need to put together a portfolio of your samples. People will know you by your name and your work. And I would say that this probably doesn't make sense as a writer. Like if I don't know, you can build a reputation for yourself, but it's pretty rare that a client is going to be able to read something and recognize it as you and attach your name to it without a brand. So I would say spend the time to put your portfolio together. So what to include in your portfolio? I include at least 2 samples of every type of content that I write. So as you can see, I have more than 2 there. But if you only have a couple, like I would say it's pretty standard for most people to ask for like 3 writing samples. I put more just because I've been writing for so long. But I write blogs, ebooks, and guides, case studies, and I have at least 2 samples on every type of content that I write. Another thing is obviously include your best work, and then also your most impressive publications for the reason that I stated earlier. There's the question, what if I don't have samples? And I get this question all of the time. It's totally fine if you're a new freelancer and you don't have any samples. People often don't care what you have done, they just care that you can do it. So in this instance, it's totally fine to create spec samples. And this is actually what I did when I first started. You can choose a publication that's kind of your ideal and then just write an article as if they had hired you to write it. Another thing that you can do is you can like create a Medium or start blogging, just basically just do anything to demonstrate your skill. Whether it's spec, samples, writing on Medium, anything like that. Another question that I get is like, what about ghostwriting? This one can be tricky because your name is not attached to it. So like I've done some ghostwriting for Business Insider. As you notice, like in my introduction, I say that I have written for Business Insider, like my words are there, but it's not necessarily under my name. So what you can do is you can review your contract and see what it says about whether or not you can include that as a sample. And then I would always ask permission, because a lot of times you're writing for like another professional. And sometimes they care, sometimes they don't care. So just check out what your contract says and then ask permission to see if you can. If not, then you can like allude to it like, hey, I write for this publication, my words are there, but here's some samples with my name on it. All right, so the next bit of homework, compile your best samples, put them on your site or in a portfolio. And if you don't have any, create some specs. Okay, so the next thing to do when you're building your brand is building your reputation. And I have this, I talked about this a little bit, but you want to be the number one person that someone thinks of when they want to hire a writer. So for example, if you're thinking like case study, you're probably going to think of Joe Kletke or Emma Samasco. Editing, you're going to think of Erica Schneider. Freelancing advice, you're going to think of any of those three people that we mentioned, or Elle McCain. I put this example from Chantel. I actually don't know what her last name is. Maybe that's part of her brand. But she's super fun on social media, and she's just like a great marketer. But she has herself as the digital marketing guy, which is hilarious. And anyway, so I think that's like a really good way to sum up of what you want to do. You want to become the guy or the gal in your niche. And some ways to do that is to niche down. Make sure that when you are on, when you're writing, when you're on social media, when you're creating content, when you're seeking out clients, you really have a niche, and that you have an expertise. And this is I think this is going to be especially more important now with AI and what it can do. Like we really need to be like niche and subject matter experts. This can be hard to stick to when you first start. Like when I first started, I was writing for a plumber, and I was writing like SEO penny per word content and like marketing content. But I think the faster that you can niche down, the more like you're gonna become that guy. And then make sure that you are focusing your messaging online around that one topic. The next thing is to build a network. And maybe it seems strange that I've included this as like personal branding, but I have a little picture of just some of my freelance writing friends in Entourage. But it's possible to kind of leverage, well, not leverage, that sounds like a gross word for that, but just to build friendships. And people often think of like experts in a group, like and for me, this has actually been probably like building my network has been the number one thing that I've done for my brand and for my business. And there's a couple of reasons of once people start to like get to know you, they start talking about you. So it feels like such a win when like, any one of my freelance friends or Moxie or Peak Freelance or something, when they talk about me and when they share my stuff. And that can only happen if they know who you are. It also gives you a community. Again, this is, kind of outside branding, but it gives you friends. Freelancing can be lonely. And so, you have friends that you can meet up with at conferences and stuff, but it's also like a great way to get referrals and just to be like talked about in your industry and in your niche. Another thing that's important as you're building your brand is to capture some results and some testimonials. There's a few different ways. I just kind of do the personal outreach, just like, hey, how can I have a LinkedIn review, or how have things been working out? Dan Kinnitz, he just recently posted something on Twitter about how when he asks a client, like when they're onboarding, he asks like, what does success look like for you? And if you ask that during onboarding, then it's like perfectly smart when you're done to just ask them for what their deliverables are. You're setting them up for success. And then once you ask what the results were, then you can see if you have improved the result, if you achieved results for them, and then use it on your website. Whoops. And then another thing that I think Elise Dobson does this, but she sends I think it's Elise. I don't know. She sends a survey after every like the first project with a client, and she'll basically just like ask for results and ask for testimonials, ask what she can do better. And that's like a great way to get information that you can include on your website. Another thing that goes with your representation is just being cool online. Online's a weird place. So I like to try to make a really concerted effort just to be kind, to not respond to people who like aren't kind. It can get really easy to be like, oh, I'm defensive, I'm gonna like respond to this, but like mute's great. Don't get personal. And then I also like that I'm building a business. I'm not building a political campaign. Of course, everybody has their own ideas, but it's like once people like associate you with a certain thing, whatever it might be, it can be like off-putting either, and so I would say just only talk about your business. All right, so next action item, commit to engaging with like-minded people more regularly. There's a lot of friends that I've made on Twitter, on LinkedIn, just by like talking to them. And that has been like super positive for my business. It's been super positive for my brand, for my online reputation. It's just been great. The next thing, do as Elise does, if it was Elise, and set up a system to capture testimonials and results. And then also just make sure that when you're online, you're talking about your business. Okay, so the next thing, and this is really huge for building a personal brand, is how you engage and what you do on social media. So during the pandemic, this is kind of when I started to get serious about my personal brand and about social media, probably because I was inside and I was bored. And I'd always had like clients coming through, but once I really started to focus my social media and only talk about, I think my Twitter was just like random like thoughts here and there. But once I started only talking about writing and only talking about marketing, things like that, it really I just started growing and people started to like follow me. And anyway, basically from that time, I ended up like almost quadrupling my revenue. The clients that were coming in were just like a lot more top notch. I started getting like podcasts and speaking gigs. People wanted to hear more from me. And then I've also just been able to grow like a really cool community where people are engaging, and that's led to like sponsorship deals and just like paid gigs, things like that. So social media, it really is like such a good tool to use for building a personal brand, especially when you're just like on your own as a business. Another thing that I think is important to kind of point out is the age of the individual creator is just like here right now. With innovations in tech and social media, it's just the freelancers world, it's the creators world. As of now, there's like over 100 million people who are identifying as a creator. And I categorize freelancers in that for sure. But and then kind of another thing is like 69% of consumers are trusting creators over brands. And so it's really lucrative if you're an industry professional, and whatever it is you talk about, there's like a new trend where people are coming to these individuals to promote content for them, as opposed to promoting it from their own accounts. And those are paid opportunities. And and they're awesome. So yeah, so creators and freelancers, essentially, that not only are they like using it to get clients, but they're also like making money from their personal brand. One cool example of this, I think, is LinkedIn, and Justin Welsh. Everybody probably knows who he is, but Business Insider, they ran an article, I think it was last year, just talking about the rise of the $1 million LinkedIn influencer. And it's pretty wild. LinkedIn has been around since like 2003, but with the rise of the creator economy, LinkedIn and a lot of really all the social platforms have like revamped around the individual. And, you know, people are really building these huge brands. They have brand partnerships, and they're making a lot of money. So kind of a unique opportunity right now to use social media for branding, but also to use it as like an additional way to make money. So some quick do's and don'ts. Do absolutely share your expertise. And I actually think that I limit myself to only sharing my expertise. I don't talk about my, I don't talk about my family very often, or I don't talk about like I said, my politics. I talk specifically about my business. And then within that, I only speak about my niche. And the reason for that is because I want to attract the clients. I want to attract the community members. I want to attract the friends who are also in that space. And I don't want I want my social to be somewhere where people can go and learn about that, or engage about that, or ask me, to write for them about that. And yeah, so and then also, which I talked about this a little bit, but make sure that you are engaging with others, building those relationships. Once they follow you and share some of your content, it's like just like a great way to really grow your brand and to establish your credibility. And then don't spread yourself thin, like I mentioned. Don't be talking about so much that people don't know who you are, or what you talk about, or what you do. Don't get too personal. Don't be mean, and don't only talk about yourself. Anytime I share a post that's like about me, like nobody cares. Maybe they care if they're like my friend or something, but like they're not coming to like learn about me. They're coming to get some ideas about how they can improve their business, or how they can become a better writer. Or so if you can focus your message on talking about other people, then you'll be doing well. So I have embraced the cringe on here as action item 5. It can be awkward on social media. Like sometimes you're like, oh, like it just, I don't know. But I just say embrace it. Like really, some people might find what you do cringy, whatever. Like a lot of more people are going to find it helpful. So just embrace it and just go for it. Next thing is to own your audience. And it's really important to build on social media, of course, but with a lot of the changes, like it's important to also have a place where you can own your audience. The reason for that, social algorithms change all the time. Even when Elon acquired Twitter, like my engagement completely changed. It really tanked. But anytime like a social algorithm changes, your audience, like it will fluctuate. Same thing with AI. Like AI is really fundamentally the way people search for content and consume information. So and there's a lot more noise out there, and I think there will continue to be more noise. So I would say that whatever you can do to lock in your audience, and make sure that they are subscribed to you, and then like the better off that you're going to be. Some ways to do that. This is another case for a website. Anything that you can do to drive traffic to your website, as opposed to like, not that you don't want traffic on your social channels, you absolutely do, but a website is where, it's a platform that you own. Same thing with your blog. This is lofty, very ambitious, but a community is a great, if you have some sort of like separate community. Moxie's doing a great job with this, with like owning their audience, as opposed to like going on a Facebook Live or something. And then newsletter, I think it can be really difficult to build a newsletter. It is difficult, but it's such a good way to engage with the people who want to hear from you, because they're opting in. They're like, here's my email address. I want to hear from you. It's a really good way to just lock in your audience. And then Podcasts are like pretty hot right now too. So next action item, I've got some field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Find a way to build an audience, and then just really lead into that. Again, you don't have to start a podcast and a website and a newsletter and all these things. Like that's super overwhelming, but maybe choose one thing that appeals to you and just and start building there. Okay, and then the last thing is, and this I think is really important, especially probably because I'm a writer, so it's like my favorite, but really think about the voice that you want to have across social media. Like tell people who you are. Are you the marketing guy or gal? Are like who are you, and how do you talk about certain things? So are you going to make them laugh? Are you going to make them think? Are you going to inspire them? And then here's some examples from people that I think are doing a great job with voice. Krista Doyle, I don't know if you follow her, she's so funny, but she basically talks about AI, and that's like kind of all she talks about recently. And she's really established her voice as a subject matter expert for AI. She's funny, she's insightful, and she's doing a lot to just set trends of like how you develop prompts, or how you do all these different things in AI that none of us really know how to do. She's really leaning into that, and so that's cool. I love Erica Schneider. She's I've kind of coined her the editing gal for this one, but she's really charming, she's funny, she's smart. She keeps her tweets to either editing or like bro culture. So she's kind of like a harmless troublemaker, and it makes her really fun to follow online. Brooklyn, I dubbed him the freelance guy, but he does a lot of Dear Freelancer posts, so people like automatically hone in and know that's who he is. They're going to get something super valuable. Same thing, he's funny, he uses a lot of metrics to show like how things are doing, how things are working for him, and then he also gives like a lot of like really solid advice. So if you go to Brooklyn, you're getting those things. Maria, I thought this tweet is funny because she's saying she's having a brand ID crisis, which is probably true because she's going through a career transition. But for a long time, she's branded herself as the D2C mom, or the D2C mom copywriter. Again, her tweets are like on point. They're funny, they're witty. She's always asking questions and starting conversations, and she's developed like a really fun brand around that. And then finally, I mean, you can't really talk about establishing a brand without talking about Amanda Natividad. And she kind of she jokes a lot about being a thread boy. And a lot of what, she's developed a lot of these different like threads that are super insightful. It's almost, it's basically like reading like a really like succinct blog almost, but she does a lot of advice. She's really real. Another thing too, she's always thinking outside of the box and creating new concepts. I mean, she came up with the idea of the whole zero-click content thing, which I think that we've all been thinking about for a long time, but didn't have a name for it. So she's done a really good job of just like establishing her voice, who she is, and you know exactly what you're going to get if you go to Amanda for something. So finally, decide who you want to be online, pick a theme and lean into it. And then quick recap, questions.
Awesome. Some awesome questions. Feel free to continue dropping them in Q&A. I love this one. I actually wrote it down myself. What are the pros and cons of naming your company after yourself? Like first another name.
Yeah, this is really good. And this is actually something that I struggled with when I first started. So I have like an LLC called Searchlight Content, which is really funny because probably like once a quarter, people will call me and ask me if they can rent a Searchlight from me. I'm like, not a service I provide. But I think as a freelancer, I think that the best thing that you can do is if you're looking to go the freelance, build a personal brand, get brand deals, I think that you should brand yourself 100% with your name. You should be you should be a Ashley R. Cummings or Kaylee Moore or Michael Keenan or something like that, because you're just a one-person team and you want people to be thinking of you and hiring you and Googling you. If you have ambitions to like go into an agency, that's when I would probably go like the Searchlight Content route or the Beam Content or something like that. If you're looking to branch out and offer more content marketing services, then I would say that you want to build your brand around that. So really just depends on what you do. If you're sticking with freelancer, go with your name.
Love it. another question on should samples be embeddable or downloadable? I rarely create public facing content. So what suggestions do you have?
Yeah, so I have a couple of these. I have most of mine are links to like whatever, like the Shopify blog or something. But I do have a couple samples that, like my ads, for example, like I can't like send somebody to a newsletter ad with a link. And so I have created a PDF of it, and they can click on it and a PDF will show up in a separate screen. So I think that's a good way to do it, is just to to make it a PDF and then create a link to it.
Love it.
And I think that some of those unusual samples, I think it can help to not like do full on case study, but just frame it with a little bit of storytelling so that people understand, oh, here's what I'm looking at and here's what it was used for. And
Yeah, absolutely.
On building your audience, what's the secret to finding the USP that you offer that nobody else offers if you're one of thousands of writers in the same niche?
Yeah, I would say this is hard because, I mean, honestly, like a lot of the B2B freelancers, we do the same thing. We have the same clients. We talk about the same things. But I think that's kind of where the visual identity can come in and help you. Like when you think of Kat, you like see the paper clips and you see her logo or something. But also maybe just like leaning into a specific type of your niche. I think Kaylee Moore does a great job of this. Like she writes for SaaS companies essentially, but she really leans into like e-commerce and retail. And if you go to her site, she talks about freelance writing, of course, but she also is like talking a lot about like that specific part of her niche. So so I would say establishing your visual identity and then, just like niching down.
I want to ask these last two. They're like two sides of a different coin. So one is, I can sometimes be introverted. So what marketing tips would you have on building a personal brand as an introvert?
I am 100% an introvert, like absolutely an introvert. I wouldn't say that I'm like a shy person and I like people, but like I mean, one of the reasons is I'm a freelancer is because I am an introvert, and I would say we kind of have a unique advantage as introverts because of how popular like online culture is. Like you can put yourself out there on social media and like never have to talk to anybody. You can write a blog and never have to talk to anybody. You can, you can build in all of these different places. You don't necessarily have to like do public speaking or like go to all these events and stuff. But I would say like lean into the online community and the online platforms because it's not going to like drain your energy.
I love that. And then it's not really a different side. Anyway, I love this question. What if I feel more dynamic as an individual than can be conveyed in a brand? Any tips on that? This person says, for example, I think of myself as deep, insightful, and funny and lighthearted. So
I think that video content can capture that. That's one reason that Michael and I decided to do freelance bidders, because I mean, it's silly, and I definitely don't want to like drunk freelancer to be my brand, but I want it to be like she's funny, she's approachable, like she can make content that's interesting that we want to watch. So I think that like, if you have one of those personalities, then you're a great person for a podcast, and you're a great person for like a YouTube show, YouTube content.
I love it. Will you pop up your slide that you have, if it's easy, where to find you online? I'll also include that in the replay. But thank you so much for your expertise and your time and some like amazing quotes that I like tried to scribble down as you were saying them. So, and thanks to everyone who joined us. I'm super excited for our workshop series and loved having you, Ashley, here along with us. And I'm just going to go like binge freelance bidders like the rest of the day.
Do it. Everybody do it. It's fun. It's fun. You guys will like it. We answer good questions. We're gonna be doing season 2 pretty soon. We've got to find a spot, lock in a sponsor, and then it's coming. It's gonna be fun.
Coming.
I'm into it. A freelance bidders
very much.
drinking with freelance cake. Anyway, Make it happen.
There we go. Okay. Okay.
Now we're
Tequila
talking.
and cake.
Yes,
Tequila
tequila
and
and cake. And on that
I'm here for
note,
this.
thank you so much. We'll see you all in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
See you.